about 15 minutes to log in. वो travel कर रहे हैं, office जा रहे हैं वापस.
So we can start because they were maybe Diwali night program they were getting ready. Anyhow, we are live on YouTube now. Shivanidhi, you can take over. We can start. It's 3 seconds.
Yes. I think Vikas ji wanted to say something. Vikas ji, आप unmute हैं?
Yeah.
हाँ जी.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We can wait 5 minutes.
ठीक है, 5 मिनट वेट कर ले.
Yeah, because only 22 people is joined right now, and within 5 minutes more people will join.
ठीक है, fair enough.
So we can wait for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Venu sir, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
How are you, sir?
As usual, very great.
As usual. Looking smart, sir.
Sir is not looking smart. Sir is smart.
Sir, looking smart means first he has to be smart, then only he can look.
सभी आपका बड़प्पन बोलने में है.
So sir, I think by the time we introduce our learned speaker and एक दो करेंगे sir, 5-7-10 मिनट निकलेंगे ही. तो suggest शुरू करें with the permission of the house.
Yes, please go ahead.
ठीक है sir. A very good evening to everyone here, all our members of the Association of Corporate Advisors and Executives, all the participants who've joined us and who are yet to join us, our very learned speaker, CA Venugopal Gella. To everyone, I extend in capacity as a chairperson of the Indirect Tax Committee at ACA, a very warm welcome to all of you. We were thinking whether or not to organize this session because we also have a refresher course coming up very shortly. But when I had spoken to the learned speaker a few weeks back and he gave me his permission, we thought that nothing doing, we must go ahead with this session. We at ACA, the entire agenda of organizing this session is to add value to each one of us so that at the end of the session, each one of us are a little more learned on of e-invoicing, which is a new feather to the hat as far as GST is concerned. As we know, a certain class of assessees, they have been made, it's been made mandatory for them to follow this principle of e-invoicing, and very shortly around January next year, we also see another set of assessees will soon be added within the sample e-invoicing. With this idea in mind, we thought of organizing an interactive session on e-invoicing, its impact on business, industry, and processes. Just to give you a very brief of how the session will pan out, we have approximately 2 hours on us. Sir will be speaking in the first half, covering the statutory and the legal provisions. We will take a logical break of about 6 or so. We will try and address a few questions. Mind you, participants, it will not be possible for us to address all the queries, but within the span of the first break we take, we'll try and take up some queries which our learned speaker will throw light on. After which, sir will continue with the second half. He will also be showing us a live demo and he will speak about the practical aspects of e-invoicing, and as the topic states, the impact on business processes and industries. Without much ado, may I now request my co-chairperson, Shubham Khaitan, to kindly introduce our learned speakers to all the participants. Over to you, Shubham.
Good evening to all the participants. At the outset, I would like to thank everyone for joining us in this webinar today, which I'm sure will be very interesting. We have a very learned speaker amongst us, whom I'm very fortunate enough to know very closely also. I've been very closely in interaction with him for the past 2 years, and I don't see a better person to address the kind of topic that we are having today. Though he needs no introduction, which I'm sure a lot of people must be knowing him, I would have to do the formality of introducing him to each one of you. Mr. Venugopal Gella is a partner in Venu and Vinay. He qualified as a chartered accountant by securing the 45th rank. He's also a certified information system auditor. He holds numerous other certificates, namely DISA, course on business valuations, internal audit, fraud detection, and forensic auditing. He has also completed a 1-year course from IIM on data analysis and business intelligence. He's a very active speaker at ICI and other numerous platforms on GST, on technology, and with regard to its implementation challenges, not just GST, but all kinds of technology related aspects, to be honest. He has authored various industry specific handbooks on GST. He has contributed to the technical guide on GST audit released by ICI, other publication materials. He conducts workshops on filing returns with easy use of automation. He has developed number of Excel-based free utilities, which I am also using. I'm sure you will find a lot with regard to his Excel-based utilities, which help us a lot in numerous ways. But there are a number of utilities which you can find out from Venu sir, which helps us in every way in different walks of life, not just GST, and in other aspects also. It helps us. He is a GST faculty for ICI and has conducted numerous workshops and webinars. He was the co-opted member of the Indirect Taxes Committee of ICI during the tenure of 18-19. He is also the core committee member of FKCCI GST wing. He advises on technology for GST implementation and integration of accounts and return filing utilities. His other areas of practice include designing and development of internal controls and process documentation, consulting in ERP implementation, management consultancy for business analysis. He conducted workshops for corporates on use of technology, improvement of efficiency using Excel, building automated reports from accounting and financial applications. So I believe the kind of assimilation that we need for this particular topic of one hand knowledge of GST and technology. Very few people have this, both the knowledges combined together, and he's an expert not just in one knowledge, but both the knowledges together. So I would now hand over the proceedings to Venu sir and request you to take this session forward now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shubham. And thank you, Shivaniji, for the kind words in the introduction. Is the screen visible?
So it's visible, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Firstly, members, it's always a pleasure speaking on this forum, especially on ACA and other chapters in Calcutta. And honestly, I should admit and acknowledge that couple of members present here are very much knowledgeable, and they're even capable to speak on this topic much better than me. But however, it is their humbleness and they want to bring different flavor to your participants. And so the Association of Corporate Advisors always brings the good faculties across India. So thank you for inviting me to this session. As Shivani mentioned, the session I have structured in 3 parts. I'm sure most of you are already aware of E-Invoice, maybe the process, concepts, whatever, but there would be a few members since it is coming new, they might not be aware. So I thought I'll give an overview of this, and I will give an E-Invoice process. We will do a live demo so that you can experience this alien, how it would really be. What is most important for the discussion for the day is how does this impact on the business? That is something which we will be looking at it. And any questions you have, feel free to put your questions in your chat box, and in between we can have an interactive session too. All right. So just to start with the background of e-invoicing, it is not just that something which has come up now. It started 3 years back, if I have to say, where in the parliamentary session, where the government has mentioned that we will bring up this concept of e-invoicing. Now, when it was announced, most of the people were thinking, okay, we are already doing business electronically. I use an accounting software. I generate invoices electronically using my software. So I'm already compliant with it. But answer is there is a difference between a digital invoice versus e-invoice. And please note, accounting is a metric. Today, if I have to say, there is a shift which is happening from an accountant versus a transaction process operator. So a data entry operator is different from an accountant. As we go across, I will mention. And in the scale of ease of doing business, year on year, we are performing up. We are definitely going up in the scale of ease of doing business. In the years to come, with e-invoice and lot of digitalization, we are going to even much better in doing this. After the implementation of e-invoice, okay, this was a survey done by one of the big four in another country where the e-invoice has been implemented, where they have mentioned that post e-invoice implementation, the cost of doing business for transaction accounting would reduce by 96%. When we say like 96% is a huge saving, like today, if one has to do an accounting, say each voucher transaction accounting, say cost rupees 100, it is going to cost rupees 4. And when we say transaction accounting, it is just the user who does the accounting. Error is human, galtiyan to hoti rehte, then someone has to correct it, someone has to audit it, someone has to approve it. There is a whole chain, everything forms part of the cost. All these costs are going to slice down to 96%. So that's a huge thing. And the time that gets saved is 80% of the time is saved. So there is a lot of time that is available in this domain of transaction accounting with regards to invoice, both sales and the purchase related. And efficiency is going to go up by 15 times. In fact, this sentence is sufficient enough for you to envisage what would be the impact which is going to happen on business after the implementation of invoice. Last, it is going to bring better compliance to the taxpayers and simplified audits. And every time when the government says that, okay, it is for better compliance for the taxpayer, only thing which comes to my mind is it for better compliance for the assessing officer or to us? Agar, if I have to say 10 years back, if we look at how the return filing used to be, we used to submit a physical copy. There used to be EDP systems. And from sales tax era, we moved to VAT, and some states have gone online. Then we started filing the VAT returns online. So officers jo kaam pehle karte the compilation of data is available now. And from there, now we moved to invoice level reporting, where the officers has a lot of information on the tip of it. In fact, after the e-invoice implementation, in a full-blown e-invoice implementation, I am not exaggerating, you would find a scenario, maybe 3 years later, an officer can walk in to your premises. He can say, this particular item, let's say some electrical equipment, HSN 8703, whatever. He can say, this SKU, you should be having a stock of some 73 units. He didn't even look at your records. He didn't even ask for the information. He is coming to your premises saying that this much, this is what you should be having. Like, so to that extent, the information can be made available, collated by the system. So every time when you hear better complaints to the taxpayers, you should always be raising your alarm that, okay, it is better ease for the officer. So ease of doing business is always for the officers. Now, as Shivani already mentioned that we have gone live on e-invoice. We have actually gone live on e-invoice for more than 500 crore category people on 1st October 2020. However, there was a relaxation saying that if you are unable to do it, I'll give you some timeline. They have given a 30 days timeline, but 30 days is not for the implementation. They said even you are implementing on 23rd October, you still got to do the invoices from 1st October. But actually go live was on 1st October. And with the GST, we always think, okay, jo bhi date hai, wo to extend ho jata hai. That's always a thing which comes to the back of our mind. And with that, the positive vibes that more than 500 crores have gone live and there is no issue with the system. In the metrics of the volume of transaction which GSTN has projected, that substantial 70% of the invoices that get generated is from this category of 500 crore and above. And those people are live, and there are 10 IRP portals which the government has envisaged. Right now, we only have the first IRP NIC. With that itself, there is no hitch in the system, everything happening smoothly. Second milestone which is coming is 1st January 2021. There is only a press release towards it. There is no notification yet. But yes, more than 100 crores, they are the one who have to go live from 1st January 2021. And government is expecting to do a full-blown implementation from April 21, that every businesses person would do implementation of e-invoice. If I have to look at how did the e-invoice has been implemented by more than 500 crores, this is what, if one slide which I would want to actually portray that the way we work it. For us to work, we always have to get that josh. In fact, you would all agree with me, during your exam days, one day before the exam, you have an ability to read the whole of the book. So that's what the engineering students also do, is like you need some inspiration to come, and that inspiration comes only when there is a last minute panic. So then you will come. So in fact, my friend was saying that, okay, we Indians work on a rocket principle. Matlab kya is, like, we don't aim high for the sky. Unless our tile is on fire, we actually don't put all our efforts in doing the right thing that we have to do, right? Now, why am I saying this? Let's look at the stats of first 500 crores e-invoice adoption. Now, e-invoice was in cards from last year, right? So notification 68, 69 by 2019, from last year, the e-invoice was saying, and we were supposed to go live from 1st April 2000 this year. For some reason, again, it got deferred to 1st September. There was ample enough time to actually adopt the schema. Once they said that on 1st October, they said, yes, we are live and it is not going to change. Then people started adopting. On the day one, there were 8 lakh invoices that got generated. The number of invoices that got generated per day is 8 lakhs, 8.4. And on 31st October, it is 35 lakh invoices that got generated. Number of users who are active, live and using on 1st October is 3,500, and the number of users who are active and using on 31st October is the 28,000, close to 30,000. Maybe still you will find that 1% of the people who are not using it or who have not adopted. So this slide itself states that, okay, there is going to be a DNA adoption challenge, that last minute tak हम ये सोचेंगे ये डेफर हो जाएगा या ये तो सिंपल है, जो होगा तब देखा जाएगा. Like that's how we always work. So I would recommend that we as a professionals, we should definitely advise the client, saying that early adoption is better. It will save a lot of both time, cost, tension, everything, and it give a lot of benefits to the users. All right. So let's look at the legal provisions first, because it is very important. अगर कानून में कुछ नहीं लिखा है कि ऐसा करना है, तो we always feel that okay, क्यों करना है, वो क्यों पहले आ जाता है, बाद में करूं या ना करूं आया. Now, this one slide, I have put all the legal provisions, because I don't want to talk much on legal provisions because you are already aware of it. So this slide says that the e-invoice has to be done. And as I said, the notification 68 by 2019 is the genesis for e-invoice. We all know Rule 46, which talks about the contents of the invoice. But Rule 48, which talks about manner in which invoice to be issued, where original to the recipient, say a duplicate to the transporter, triplicate अपने पास रख लो. We all know for goods ऐसा है, services ऐसा है. So the government said 48 sub rule 4, where it said that okay, you, if a notified class of people, if you are notified, you have to issue INV1. If you are issuing any document other than INV1, it is not a valid document, and you don't require multiple copies. In fact, in the recent one of the press release, the chairman of the finance secretary also mentioned that we are going to do away with e-way bills. As of now, it is not, but in the times to come, the government is clear that if e-invoice is there, let us not do e-way bills. And they have also mentioned that if you are having an electronic copy of e-invoice, you don't need to carry the physical copy of either invoice or the e-way bill. So that is also the government has mentioned. Now, to what documents the e-invoice has to be done. E-invoice has to be done for B2B supplies. It is not B2C, and it is tax invoice. So rule for the invoices that are covered under Rule 46 supplied to a registered person, e-invoice is applicable. So if I am making a taxable supply to an unregistered person, or if I am making an exempt supply to a registered person, e-invoice is not applicable. E-invoice is applicable only when there is a taxable supply made to a registered person, not just the registered person, the persons who are the documents that are covered under Rule 46. Yeah, the launch date was first day of October. However, notification 61/2020, they have said that launch date is going to be the same, but 30-day relaxation was given for more than 500 crore. What should be the contents of the e-invoice? The contents of which we generally call it as schema. Schema has been defined under notification 60/2020, where different fields that are one needs to understand has been given. They have also given the cardinality. Cardinality indicates that with the presence or absence of the fields. I will explain in a while. So the documents that are currently to be required to be given is invoice, and invoice issued whether it is a domestic, a B2B supply, or supply to an SEZ, or export documents. All these invoice to be covered. Credit note and debit notes. So these are the documents that needs to be covered, and it needs to be complied with e-invoice. Now, how do we enable the e-invoice? I have given the list of the websites where one needs to look for. There is something called e-invoice API sandbox. Technical term sandbox, our common understanding terminology, if one says sandbox, it is a backup server, or it is a test bed, a test server. You will find all the APIs, you will find raw JSONs, you will find different payloads, you can download all the information. You can register yourself, more than 100 crores, register yourself in a trial website given by NIC. Why do I register on a trial website? You can do a testing before go live. What is go live? Go live is einvoice1.gst.gov.in. So the first website is e-invoice 1, e-invoice 2, 3, 4. They are not live yet. This will be live. I'm sure the most common question people will have is, okay, is this live working? Okay, right now it will be working because there are only a smaller population. When the larger population comes, will it be live? There are two reasons. I don't see a reason why it will go down, because the process at which it will do is little different. I will explain. Second, there are multiple IRPs that are going to come. So you would be needing this website. Anyhow, I would be sharing a copy of this presentation, but yes, you would have to register yourself and test it. And I'm sure you have also noticed that when you log into the portal, you would see your turnover category. The moment you log in, the GSTN has classified the turnover category. Effective from last Friday, you would be noticing this message. You are more than aggregate turnover is more than 100 crores, more than 500 crores. You will be seeing, and they have also given a computation logic on what basis they have made this classification. If for some reasons you feel you are applicable for e-invoice, say you are more than 500 crores, you are applicable for e-invoice, but system is not capturing it, you yourself can voluntarily go and say enable e-invoice for me. It will ask what is your aggregate turnover, you just enter, your e-invoice gets automatically enabled. So system has they have ensured that anyone who wants to be into this category, they will automatically be into the e-invoice. System has taken care of it. People who are exempted from this application of e-invoice is SEZs have been exempted, and the people who have to be taken care under Rule 54. One is insurance company, banking company, financial institutions, including NBFCs, goods transport agency, passenger transportation agency, admission to exhibition of cinematographic films in multiplex screens. These people have been exempted from issuing e-invoice. A very simple reason: the contents of the documents which these taxpayers issue contains more information about the business and less of the tax rules. That is why Rule 46 has been relaxed for this category of payers. Like a GTA is more interested to publish what are the quantum of the goods that have been handed over, who is consignor, who is consignee, the mode of transportation. So his consignment note will have more documents. So the government in Rule 54 already they said that, okay, as long as the tax amount is mentioned in the invoice, that is sufficient enough, and you don't need to give the entire Rule 46 compliance to it. So given that they have already been relaxed, so they have been relaxed with e-invoice, and adding to that list, SEZs have been relaxed. If you are making a supply to SEZ, you have to do e-invoice. If you are an SEZ, you don't need to do comply with the e-invoice. So that is one thing one have to look at it. There are also other questions that always come to me is, I am a service provider and I'm in reverse charge. Let's take an example that I'm an advocate. Along with advocate services, I have other services. So I am holding a registration, but the advocate related services are under reverse charge. Now, should I need to do an e-invoice? Because I am not the one who is paying tax, the other person is the one who is paying tax. The answer is yes. Even though your supplies are covered under reverse charge, you have to do an e-invoice. Contrary, I am a recipient of the services or the goods for reverse charge where 93 or 94 is applicable. So I am issuing a self-tax invoice. Should I need to do an e-invoice? Answer is no. For a self-tax invoice, e-invoice is not required. The next question people also ask is, what about an ISD invoice? Should an ISD invoice go through the e-invoice procedure? Again, answer is no. ISD need not be covered under the e-invoice, since from the definition of invoice, whatever the invoice definition and which is covered under section 31, they are referring to more to do tax invoice, and ISD invoice is not something which is covering under Rule 46. Couple of other questions that I also get is, when it is talking about invoice, then why do we need to do an invoice for credit note and a debit note? Please note, a credit note and debit note which is referred to section 34 is also originating against an invoice. अगर credit note debit note क्यों आएगा? पहले invoice नहीं है तो ये नहीं आएगा. Because it is linked to an invoice, so you have to also issue a e-invoice for a credit note and a debit note. You may call it as e-debit note and e-credit note. So that is also possible. Okay. Right. Who are the people consumers of the invoice? The consumers of the invoice is seller. Seller gets the details of the signed invoice. Then GSTN gets the invoice. E-way bill portal gets the invoice. There is a banker in between who also have an access to invoice if you subscribe to it. Then there are others, the buyers who are of integration of accounting using API. Even this is going to come in a phased manner. I will explain this in a schematic diagram. This diagram will explain you broadly the process of the e-invoice. I am a seller. I am a seller. I am doing e-invoicing. I am a seller. I am doing e-invoicing. I will upload my invoice. I will upload my invoice to a portal, IRP, registrar 1, registrar 2. There are going to be 10 registrars. Registrar is going to do some validation check. They will do some kind of validations. Once the validation is done, they will send back to the recipient a digitally signed hash, which is invoice. There is a QR code in it. I will show you how the QR code look like. And it can also be printed, and it will be auto-populated to the GSTR 1, 2, and other things. So if you have to understand, so supplier is generating an invoice. Before issuing to the customer, he is going to apply to the GSTN portal, which we are calling at registrar 1, 2, 3, 10. This goes to the GSTN system. How does it happen? IRP connects to e-waybill portal and creates an e-waybill, connects to the GSTN portal and updates the GSTR1. As it is updated real time, it will be visible to the recipient in their 2A, and it is also be available to the bankers if you are subscribing for any invoice based financing. And not just that, this will also be made good to the recipient for the transaction posting. So there are APIs that can be consumed, so the transaction gets posted automatically to the books of accounts using an API. So in an e-invoice system, the data which travels from one place to other, it travels in a very smoother way. Okay. There are some technical terms. Before I take the break for Q&A, let us understand there are 4 important technical terms one needs to understand. First one is IRN, invoice reference number. This is something going to be a key. Invoice reference number is a unique number for all the invoices which are generated under e-invoice. It is constructed by a combination of these 4 parameters: GSTN of the supplier, financial year in which the document is raised, the document number and the document type. ये चारों numbers के combination में ये 64 digit IRN generate हो जाएगी. This is an alphanumeric, a very unique, and it is getting generated using SHA 256 SHA-256 algorithm. So basis this, it will happen. Now sometimes people ask, what should I do with this? Do nothing. Ensure that whether this exists. Right? Do I need to do a data entry of it? Do I need to print it on my invoice? Choice is yours if you want. If you try to attempt doing a data entry, very chance of it you doing error is very high. 99% you will do an error, because अभी जो screen में दिख रहा है 45 3C 0D, we always get confused between O and 0, 5 and yes, like these numbers will get mixed up, when we will end up making mistake. हमारा 13 digit bank account number सही ढंग से याद नहीं रहता है, so we can't even memorize this thing. So you need to know that there should be an IRN, and IRN is combination of this. It is unique to each of the document. Second thing one needs to know is IRP. Who is an IRP? IRP is Invoice Registration Portal. He is called as Invoice Registration Portal. What does he do? He collects the e-invoice from the taxpayer. So he collects a document from the taxpayers. Once he collects, he does some verification of it, signs it, and gives it back to the taxpayer. Now let's understand little detail about it. In fact, you can, for the ease of remembering, you can call it as invoice reporting portal. You are reporting something to a portal. You can easily correlate an IRP with a security guard at the entrance of the factory. What does the security guard does? Whenever the material is coming inside the factory, he is going to verify that okay, माल कुछ आया है, उसका register में he is just going to make an entry. He is not going to verify the quality of those material. He is also not going to verify the inside contents of those materials. He is also not going to verify on the physical जो document आया. He is not going to verify कि अच्छा last time आपने ये माल 1 लाख पे बेचा है, क्यों आज इस बार 1,10,000 पे आ रहा है? He is not going to ask that. He is also not going to ask that purchase order was for 100 quantity, invoice you are sending only for 75 quantity. He is not going to ask that. So your IRP is not going to look inside your invoice. He is invoice aaya, he is just putting an acknowledgement and give. So like the security guard at the entrance is putting a seal on the document. Acha maal andar aa gaya hai ya maal bahar ja raha hai. So he is just putting a chapa. Likewise, IRP is putting a seal, and we call it as he digitally signs the document and sends it back. Now, he does some validation, like our security guard does some validation कि अगर बगल वाला factory का gate माल यहाँ आ रहा है तो he says नहीं नहीं, not this gate, go into the other gate. Likewise IRP will say that okay, your registration number is some 33XXX and why you, but you are sending the data of 32, so it's not yours, or this document you have already sent it, so don't send me it again. Or in like the security guard is going to see the invoice, the primary contents ki ye material same supplier se aaya ki nahi, so is the IRP is going to do a validation ki content of the thing is a genuine content or not. IRP is going to do a validation of the uh, primary totals, not the thing, because this data has to go to GSTR1, which means you are not going to do a GSTR1 data entry. So the primary validations is going to do कि accessible amount 18% का इतना है, 28% का इतना है, वो सही सही पे भरा हुआ है कि नहीं. So is only going to calculate the tax amounts, the taxable value multiplied by the tax rate. Is the tax amounts coming correctly or not, is what the IRP going to check. And if the same invoice is reported to me or reported to another IRP, he is going to do a deduplicacy check. If he feels that everything is fine, he will give you back a signed invoice. Now, if you are requesting for e-waybill, not that e-waybill will be generated, e-waybill only if you are requesting for e-waybill, he would also issue an e-waybill along with this, right? So this gets reported to the common portal for GSTR1 also. The second thing one needs to know. First IRP is NIC, and the process time that it takes to generate an e-invoice is in nanoseconds. Which means the IRP server process time is so fast, it happens with a blink of an eye. That's the speed at which the process happens, and it happens at that speed. IRP is not going to store the invoices. He will only retain the invoices for 24 hours. 24 hours के पास IRP का system में data रहेगा ही नहीं. Now, if they are saying that okay, 35 lakh records which is there on the last day, let's take another 15 lakhs which is getting added, so 50 lakh records which are there. IRP is going to have 50 lakh line items. Now 50 lakh line items for a huge server to process, what is it like? हमारा Excel में ही 10 लाख line डाल सकते हैं, उसके बाद Excel open होगा नहीं होगा दूसरी बात है, but at least like so our systems we have so much data, so 50 lakh line items for IRP is like nothing. So the process time is just in multiple nanoseconds. Yeah, at a blink of an eye, IRP does the process and gives you back. IRP is not going to have a listing of any invoices, so he will only have whether their data is right or wrong. He just lists it and gives it. So एक हफ्ते के बाद, एक महीने के बाद, you can't go him saying that अच्छा मेरा सिस्टम क्रैश हो गया है, जो भी मैंने इनवॉइस आपको दिया था ना उसका कॉपी मेरे को एक भिजवा दो. IRP बोलेगा आप कौन है, मैं जानता नहीं हूँ. Like he doesn't have it. So even if you want to cancel it, the window is only 24-hour window. Right now, IRP doesn't undertake any mailing service. I upload an invoice, you don't expect him to give you back a signed invoice or an email or send a copy to the recipient automatically over email. These services are provided by ASPs. ASP undertake these services, so IRP doesn't do any of these things. So the next thing, let me also give you a little bit more about the IRP. So the response that comes back to from your IRP is like this. You upload a document. So what you get is acknowledgement number, acknowledgement date, the IRN, the SHA-256 64-bit the value. Then there would be a signed invoice and a signed QR code, and it will come with a status, whether the status is active or cancelled. One moment. Is my screen visible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, it's perfectly audible and your screen is also visible.
Okay. Yeah. Next, if the status is 0, it means some error. And do I have done sufficient number of implementation looking at what possible errors that could come in? In fact, close to 300 odd GSTNs I have implemented e-invoice so far, and I could see all different possible error codes which the government has given from the different users. And if one is well prepared and one understands the what e-invoice is, it is perfectly possible. One can actually do a proper e-invoice implementation. With the technology coming up day by day, we are becoming technocrats. In fact, you might have been observing some of the salaried employees who come to you for the income tax return filing. They come up that sir, a tax investment में save करूँगा तो इतना आएगा, or we have this new provision under 80 CCD or 80 DD, my mother investment, if I do the insurance for them, my benefit goes up. So like these days you notice that okay, even the taxpayers are sufficiently educated about the tax laws, right? uh, in fact, with the advent of technology, we financials are becoming technocrats. We now start talking XML. We understand XML. So अगर कुछ issue है तो अच्छा XML में value क्या दिख रहा है, या ITR में value इतना आ रहा है, JSON error है. Okay, some people do not go back to the again the GSTR one offline utility and correct. अच्छा उसका GST नंबर गलत है, JSON में ओपन करको वो GST नंबर को फाइन रिप्लेस करके चेंज कर दो. Like we understand now JSON, XML, all these technical terms we also understand, right? So with the advent of it, the thing, even this is going to actually go up. We are going to learn more. This is how the IRP response would look like: acknowledgement date, acknowledgement number, then the IRN and the signed invoice and signed QR code. Signed invoice roughly 4,000 characters, signed a QR code around 1,000 characters. So should you need to store this information in your database? Would it also qualify for other documents as listed in section 35? The answer may be yes, because you have to prove that yes, you have done the e-invoice, since the listing of this data is not going to be there with the IRP. So you got to have this. With the increase in the volume, the signed invoice will increase, but for one line it becomes 4,000 characters. How it would look like? This would look something like this. Left side on the screen, what you are seeing is the data that comes from the IRP. Is like blah 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 dot blah 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 blah. It's all junk. It is not for humans to read. This is for machines to read. Machines will decode that into some number, saying that okay, this is the acknowledgement number, this is the IRN. It decodes into like this is the GST and ID of this person. So it decodes into this way with a delimiter so that it can automatically do a transaction posting. In fact, during the bank audits, you would have also experienced, you get some file from the bank. You get this file with the comma delimiter and other things. You use text to CSV converter text to columns, and you convert. Likewise, the softwares read this data and post it back into the systems. So the signed invoice can be decoded into this fashion. The next thing one needs to know is QR code. What is a QR code? QR code is also something which we know. It is a quick reference code which captures a lot of information about a particular thing. Now, the e-invoice data which is received from the government portal, it also has something called signed QR code. What is a signed QR code? It signs the data saying that, okay, yes, this document has been verified. This is high level content of the invoice. This is the macro level content of the invoice. What is a macro level content? Imagine an CEO of an organization looking at an invoice received on his table is going to see अच्छा कौन सा supplier से आया, ये मेरे को मेरा कंपनी को आया, ठीक है, what is the invoice value or invoice date. He is not getting into detail. So your QR code has the listing of the supplier and recipient, the invoice number and the date of invoice, invoice value, the number of line items, HSN of the line item having highest taxable value. So whatever is the highest taxable value of it, it brings, and if there are multiple, it picks the first one, and the invoice reference number, which is IRN. So this is what the contents of the signed QR code would be. Now, when you scan that QR code, this is the QR code. When you scan it, this is what you will get it. You might be having phones. You can open your camera and you can just scan this picture. Please note, if you are trying to scan this picture using the camera which is there or in your phone, what you will see is you will see this junk. You are not going to see the content which I am showing here. If you have to see the content which is being shown here, the government on the NIC portal has given utility verify QR code. You can download, it will install an app, both Android and iPhone. So both app would be installed. Using that, when you scan it, if you scan this using that app, it will show that, okay, yes, this is the buyer, this is the document date, and this is the details. So you have to use the government app given by the government. Let's look at some of the FAQs which people have. Then I will take the Q&A. Couple of the questions which I get is, what is the time at which I have to do e-invoice? The time at which you have to do invoice is as and when you have generated an invoice on your system. Once I have generated invoice on the system, should I do e-invoice immediately? Answer is yes. Can I do at a later point in time? Government is contemplating to put a time interval within which you can do. Initially, they said we'll give a 48-hour window, but later they relaxed. As of now, there is no restriction. आज की डेट में अगर मैं 1 जनवरी का डॉक्यूमेंट भी ई इनवॉइस पुश करूंगा तो सिस्टम डज इट, बट दैट दे आर गोइंग टू नाउ पुट अ ब्रेक in the 3rd week of November when they are migrating the old the data of e-invoice data to the GSTN portal. They are going to put a date. Now, reading from section 31, like when the goods, you have to issue an invoice on or before movement of the goods. Read with rule 48 sub rule 4, if you are issuing a document anything other than e-invoice, it is not going to be a valid invoice. So before, on or before movement of the goods, you need to have at least the e-invoice done. How to print and send an e-invoice? We also got the amendment to rule 46 wherein they said, if you are complying with the e-invoice, please print the QR code on the top of the invoice. Should I print out the IRN? IRN is choice because the QR code contains the thing of it, but for a good practice from the recipient to know that you have done the e-invoice, print the IRN. Should the authorized signatory apply the digital signature to this invoice? If you are issuing a physical document, not the signed JSON received by the government, because आज की डेट में अगर आपने 5 लाख का माल भेजा है and you want the payment, so जो buyer है at least he need to have some document for his records. चलो ये माल आया है, approved, okay, इसको pay कर दो, he has to give it to an accountant. So some document he would be needing it. So still we continue to the practice of the physical invoice. If you are doing that physical invoice with the signed QR code on it, still you have to issue a digital signature on it. So there are a lot of tools available online to print the digital signature on it. Now the question comes is, what class of digital signature? Class 1, class 2, class 3, any class you can use, any class of digital signature, it is permitted. And what are the details of e-invoice? I should save it in our ERP. I would recommend today the data is not a huge issue. You can have whatever the amount of the data that is there. So whatever the signed payload you received from the government portal, please save it. What for some technical reasons I am unable to generate an e-invoice? What do I do? Okay, wait for some more time and generate. Now, technical reasons could be 2 things. A technical failure at your end, a technical failure at the government end. If it is a technical failure at a government end, it is going to be a failure for everyone. So definitely you will not have a penalty. But if it is a technical failure at your end, say you are using an ERP SAP renewal karna bhul gaye, suddenly vendor has disconnected, what to do? Okay, government has given a free tools, you can use that, and you still have to comply. If the technical issue is at your end, you have to comply. What happens if I don't comply? Of course the penalty is given under section 122. So this is a specific penalty. So you will be paying 10,000 CGST, 10,000 SGST. So that would be the penalty you will be paying. Can the e-invoice be cancelled? Answer is yes. You can cancel the e-invoice, but you have to cancel within 24 hours. What happens if I forget to cancel, or I realize that this is an error after 24 hours? Issue a credit note, but I did not even make a supply. I can't issue a credit note unless I make a supply. So why should I disturb the recipient 2A by showing invoice and cancellation? It's okay, then cancel in your books and the entry would have flown to GSTR1, so you can manually remove it from there. Oh, can I manually do it? Answer is yes. Your GSTR1 you can manually do it. Okay, if I do that, then there would be a difference between GSTR1 and my the e-invoice data which the government has. Of course, yes, there would be a difference. As long as you have a valid explanation and a documentation, you can always do with it. What if I've generated it by mistake? Yes, please cancel it. You can always have an option to generate and cancel. You can do that. All right. So let's understand the schema, how the schema is given. Shubham, can I just complete this section and take the Q&A?
Sure, sir. Whenever you feel comfortable. No problem.
Yes. So what we'll do is we'll quickly understand the schema and we will take the Q&A, take a break, and then understand how the live demo happens. Okay. Firstly, the schema is a document I personally would suggest everyone have to read. The notification related to the schema is well drafted. It has been well given. In this document 60/2020, I have said that the notification of INV01 has been given. They have said what are the fields that have to be used in the schema and what is the cardinality they have given. So one has to understand that how it has to be written, understood, and they have to use it. Let me explain you the cardinality. So if you open the notification, you will find there's something called cardinality, which either starts with 0.1 or 1.1, 0.n or 1.n. Anything starting with 0 is optional. Anything starting with 1 is mandatory. Anything ending with 1, it means it is one occurrence. Anything ending with n, it means it is multiple occurrence. Let me just give you one example. Seller name, is it mandatory, optional? Definitely mandatory. How many? So it should start with 1. How many times the seller name can be there? Seller name to ek hi hota hai, so it will be 1.1. Now the line items, I am making a sale, items that I'm selling, so there should be some items in the selling, so it is a mandatory field, so it start with 1. Okay, how many items I may sell? You can sell as many items as possible, so it will become 1.n. Let's look at the next thing. The ship to details, the location where the goods are moving. Now shipping address, is it mandatory, optional? Optional, so it starts with 0. And can there be multiple shipping address? As of now, no, it is only one shipping address. So it is, if you are using it, it becomes a 0.1, right? So one has to understand the cardinality. So there are various sections in the schema. There are various sections. So if you can imagine the physical invoice, you will find various sections to the document. So even the schema has been designed in the same way sections, so that you can easily understand it. And they call it as fields. So there are totally 5 mandatory sections and 11 optional sections. And in the mandatory sections, there are some mandatory fields, some optional fields. So there are totally 133 fields are there and 28 mandatory fields. So your e-invoice can be generated if you just have this 28 fields, your e-invoice can be generated, right? Now this 133 fields, you can store humongous amount of the data in the invoice, right? I will walk you through as the time comes. Imagine if this is a invoice. So there is a seller name, buyer name, the document details, line details, or the total val details. This is what the schema says. I have marked it in red color, which means these are your mandatory fields, mandatory sections. Then you have shipping address, dispatch address, or export details, payment details, reference details. These are optional details. So you can have it if you want to. So there are various sections to the schema. There are various sections to the schema, and this is how an invoice is constructed. So if you peep through the JSON file which is generated out of the e-invoice JSON, I will show you a raw JSON once. So it will contain this much information, or this information would be available. So one needs to spend more time in mapping of the fields. Like, you have to have the export details, the payment details. So generally, most of the times when a service provider or the who's doing the implementation of an e-invoice, they say they pick that those 28 mandatory fields. Acha ho gaya aapka invoice. But e-invoice, anyhow, you are giving it to the recipient. Recipient is going to consume it for his accounting purposes. So you make sure that as much as possible you configure your data to the schema, right? So friends, these are the broader things, or from the technology perspective, these are the information you need to have. So this is a sample copy of an invoice, and on the top of it you just print your QR code. You not necessarily you have to print an IRN, but just this is how your invoice would look like it. So before we get on generating an e-invoice, let us take some of the questions. So if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat, or
Yes.
I
So,
will.
thank you so much. In fact, the first 1 hour, I mean, there is already so much of data. I'm sure everyone is taking some time to assimilate that. Unfortunately, I had to re-log in, sir. So my chat has disappeared. So may I
Sure.
request my co-chairperson to kindly read out the specific queries. I think there are 2 in the
I will
chat
take out.
box, so
I
that
will
sir
take.
can address. And I have a couple of queries also, to
Sure.
which I also need answer. So you may please go ahead and take up those 2 queries, sir. And
Yeah.
after which, maybe you very quickly, before you start the second round,
Right.
I have a query or 2. Right,
Yeah.
sir.
So there's a query from Rohit, and Rohit says that our turnover is more than 500 crores. In e-invoice trial portal, IRN is being generated against the invoice issued by us in October 2020. But e-invoice portal, which is not the trial, the uploading of invoice option is not showing. Please guide us. Rohit, I think we can catch offline, or if the time permits, I will show it. There is a difference between a trial portal and the sandbox. Couple of the implementation errors which I have noticed is, let's say, simple thing called tally. We understand it much better. In tally, whenever we are doing, I am a client and I'm giving my data for the audit. In tally, all that I do is I send the tally data to my auditor as a backup. He looks at it and puts a query and sends it back, right? I, as an accountant, I'll continue to use my regular tally. Now, during the e-invoice implementation, users have created a test bed and the production data. So they have implemented the e-invoice on the backup portion of the tally, and to test whether it is working properly or not, right? So from the service provider, he thinks that everything is done. So one does the e-invoice on the backup. The people who are doing, they do it thinking that they are compliant with the e-invoice. The second thing could happen is they have connected for the test. There is a trial website. So I have shown the multiple websites. So there is a live website. There is a trial website. You have connected to the trial website and you are doing it. Now, once you are ready and satisfied, you have to reconnect to the live website and you have to do it. So the look and feel of the trial website and live website is different. And even on the live website, you can do e-invoice using the government utility. Government has given an Excel. Using that Excel, you can download that Excel, generate a JSON. It could be one invoice or a batch of 1,000 invoices. You can do it in one go. You can either one or multiple, you can generate a JSON, bind them and upload it. That is possible. Then next question is from Nilesh ji. If e-invoice is generated after 15 days, I want to change the GSTIN of the supplier. Is it possible? Okay, this is one common question that comes is, I have made a supply and at the time of supply, I did not know the buyer's GSTN ID. So I did not report the buyer GSTN ID. I have filed my return with B2C. Can I amend it? Now, the concept of amendment is not there in GST. एक बार आपने इनवॉइस इश्यू कर दिया तो कर दिया, उसको चेंज कर नहीं सकते. Then you may say, then what is the concept of table 9 amendments to B2B, table 5, 6, 7, or what is the table 10 which is an amendment to table 7? तो वो क्यों दिया हुआ? The amendments table in GSTR 1 was given that again error is human. You made a data entry error. You made a data entry error and you want to correct the data entry error. So the government has given the amendments to correct the data entry error. The amendments are not given to correct the invoice. Invoice एक बार दे चुके हैं तो उसको correct नहीं कर सकते. In this case, if you have already reported the e-invoice once reported cannot be amended. You cannot amend an invoice which is reported. What is the alternative? Cancel it. अच्छा, मेरा time limit to cancel is हो गया, मैं 15 दिन के बाद realize कर चुका हूँ. Issue a credit note and generate a new invoice, right? So all those things are possible. Next
So
question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
No,
Go
sir.
ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
So the one is QR code and IRN printing mandatory for physical invoices? It's not related to e-invoicing. So I
Yes,
don't know.
yes. No, no, it is relating to the e-invoice. So after the e-invoice is done, should I need to print the QR code on the invoice? The answer is yes. Printing of IRN is optional. It's not necessary that you have to print IRN, but QR code is mandatory. Rule 46 has been amended. And why IRN is not mandatory? Because the QR code already contains the IRN, but choice is yours. IRN you want to print it, you can print that.
So whether ITC of recipient would be disallowed if supplier has not provided an e-invoice when it was applicable to such supplier?
Okay, so this is a tricky question to answer. 16(2)(a) says that for you to avail the input tax credit, you need to have a valid invoice. Rule 48 subrule 4 says that unless you issue INV1, it is not a valid document. Not effective, but section 43A brought into a force, and they have given the other measures of which starts with notwithstanding anything contained in 16. Now, combined reading of all of this, I would say that yes, the invoice which I have received from a supplier who is supposed to do an e-invoice, he did not do an e-invoice, he just gave the goods and the physical invoice. Is it a valid invoice? Answer is no. Has he uploaded it in his GSTR1? If answer is yes, and filed his GSTR3B, visible in my GSTR2B, then your credit is intact as a recipient. The principles of natural justice will prevail. You can happily take care of it. But if the supplier is not uploading in GSTR1, then yes, your ITC is at risk.
Fine, sir. I think, sir, before moving on, I think my question was also very similar to the last one, which stands answered. So
Right.
just one thing, now that we are shifting our focus to invoicing, sir, and you also mentioned at the beginning of your deliberation that it's ease of doing business also for the department. So, sir, are we looking at a scenario where the departmental audits will also move to desk audits vis-a-vis physical audits? Any visibility on that front?
Yeah, thanks to the corona, at least 20% of the people started working from office or designed their work structure such a way that at least part-time, some people work from office. Department already moved for e-assessment, and lot of commissioner appeals are doing e-things, saying that, okay, we can do a video appeal assessment hearings, right? In fact, a couple of things recently, which I have appeared, everything happened over the web. with the e-invoice data available everywhere, and with the GSTR 19 everything electronically being available, will the audits happen at the desk? Most likely answer is yes. If I have to also look at erstwhile audits, though I'm not naming someone, if I see a difference between a service tax audits versus VAT audits, service tax officers were more comfortable visiting the premises and doing the audits. VAT officers were more comfortable, अच्छा ये मेरा checklist है, आप documents लेकर मेरे पास आ जाओ, हम आमने सामने करके कर देंगे. And in income tax, we are now automatically moved to faceless assessment. And I strongly believe that we will move to an era of desk audits and e-assessments, everything.
Thank you, sir. So I think now you may continue. We really don't have any queries.
Yeah, there's one other question
yes, sir,
from Gopal Shah, that for export company, IRN, is it mandatory if the exports exceed 500 crores? The answer is yes. Even for exports, you have to do an e-invoice. Though I have said e-invoice is applicable when you are making a supply to a registered person. However, I have also parallelly said that it is the documents covered under Rule 46. Again, to ensure that there are no litigations that come up, government also issued a notification saying that exports are also covered for e-invoice. Now, shipping information is mandatory in e-invoice. If no e-invoice GST officer catches the truck, then shall it be treated as no invoice? 100% penalty shall be liable. Shipping information is not mandatory in the e-invoice. It is an optional field. If you remember that screen, I have shown the section of the shipping as a blue color. A very simple reason: you have generated the invoice, you have sending to the port. You might want to accumulate 2-3 more things to fill the container and submit your shipping bill, so the data for it may come late. That is where even in GSTR 1, in the erstwhile where the amendment was not available, the Go portal has opened a separate block called 6E, wherein they have allowed users to enter the shipping bill information. So the shipping bill information is optional and it can be updated later. So the data travels to the GSTR 1, you can update the shipping bill later. Next, if the e-invoice is not done, will the officer catch the truck and shall be treated as no invoice? Very subjective, but very likely, because when the truck is moving, when the officer intercepts, he looks at an e-way bill. Yes, I have an e-way bill. Do I have an invoice? Yes, I have a physical invoice. Upon scanning of that e-way bill and the invoice, I find the GST number, and in my handheld device, I can see that, okay, this may trigger out saying that, okay, this is supposed to be an e-invoice. Then the officer may say that, okay, you are not compliant and you are not having a valid document. By the way, Rule 138 also amended saying that, okay, you can have the electronic version of e-invoice and the QR code that would take care of the e-way bill provisions. Anyone have any other question? Would you like to put it?
So one query from my end again, sir. So we've discussed the various turnover brackets within which the assessees are now mandatory to get within this ambit of e-invoicing.
Right.
So as of now, it's 500 crores, as you mentioned, with effect from October this year. So what if in the due course of that year, the turnover falls? Is he or such assessee allowed to come outside the ambit of e-invoice, or will it continue issuing e-invoice?
A good question. Again, the turnover had this confusion ki kaun sa turnover mein lu. Government said any of the preceding financial year, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20. In any of the preceding financial year, if my turnover is exceeding 500 crores, I have to be under e-invoice. Even this year, I do not have turnover, I have lower turnover. Government is expecting you to be in the e-invoice. Contrary, I've started my business new. It was not more than 500 earlier year. This year it is crossing 500 crores. Would I be applicable? Answer is no. You would come into phase 2, or you will be coming in phase 3.
Okay.
All right.
And so last question, sir, do we have any restriction on the line items as far as an invoice is concerned?
Yeah, technically there shouldn't be, but the government said after 1,000 line items, prepare one more invoice. So within one invoice, you create not more than 1,000 line items. Agar 1,000 line items se upar ja raha hai, generate one more invoice is what the government said. And if someone practically doesn't really work for them that their line items will cross 1,000, so they have opened a separate window for them to generate an invoice. They have to contact NIC. They have to explain their procedure, and they will be doing that.
Okay. So before you go on to the next session, so we have one query. Probably you'd like to take it up. It's in the chat box. And then, so we'll proceed to your next session. And Shubham will be around, and maybe we'll reserve the last 10 minutes, about 6:45 onwards. If we have substantial number of queries, so we'll request you to kindly take that up also. So
Sure,
we'll
sure.
address this last query, and then you're free to move on to the next half of the session.
Okay, till I start.
So the question is, does an e-invoice? Yeah, so just one question before you start. Does the e-invoice cover the branch transfers or delivery challans?
Yeah,
Mr. Sujit Shah wants you to.
Yeah, Sujit, if you have to look at it, the branch transfer, is it covering under DC or invoice? Now, is it a schedule 1 supply within the state, not even within the state, within the GSTN? Are you doing the branch transfer? Then it is a delivery challan. So it is not a tax invoice. So no e-invoice. If it is between one GSTN ID to another GSTN ID, then it is a tax invoice. So it has to be an e-invoice. A couple of other questions. One is e-invoice on B2C from 1st December. Is it mandatory? There is no e-invoice from 1st December. There is a B2C QR code notification 72/2019. I'll touch upon later. Next, the client has turnover of 130 crores in 1819 and 1920. Is the same provision applicable as 500 crores? Answer is yes. So previous year, any of the 3 preceding financial years, if the turnover is exceeding 100 crores, then you have to do e-invoice starting from 1st January 2021. All right. So let's move on to the next part of the discussion.
Yes.
Which is generating an e-invoice. So how do I generate an e-invoice? Now, government has given a multiple methods of generating an e-invoice. Government themselves have given an Excel utility. There are 4 formats of Excel utility. Format A, B, C, D. A and B is a simpler format, not having all the 133 fields which I have set. Like you do not want to give the payment information, attribute details, you do not want to give various information, so use a simpler format. Even there, you have only one line items or multiple line items, like debit note, credit notes, and you want to have one line with multiple things. So they have given the simplest format is format A and the complicated is format D. Choose any of the formats, generate a JSON, one or multiple bulk, go to the government portal, upload it. Government will generate an e-invoice and give you a signed payload. So a text file signed JSON, which you can download. That's the option 1. You want to have little more comfort. Then there are a lot of ASPs who give multiples of offerings. Start with a secured folder. आपने invoice बना दिया, आपका invoice data एक folder में रहेगा. Their utility will pick the data from that folder, push it to the government portal, and it will come back and say that it is done. So we generally call it as SFTP, secured folder file transfer protocol. Then they have given a simple Excel connectors. Like government Excel is a little complicated, so they have given a simple Excel connectors. Then they have on-premise softwares, wherein their application will reside on your premise. It will directly connect to the database, and from the database, it reads the necessary information and submits to the government. That is another tools which are available in the market. Next, a push button from the ERPs, wherein with inside your ERP, you will have a button, you press that, e-invoice will be done. Then there are API integrations. The ERPs or their programs will use a SOAP request like tally popularly uses this SOAP or using a XML JSON interface. So data is pulled from the ERP and pushed to the government portal automatically. So there are various offerings where the ASPs have done. Just to say, on the secured folder from your ERP, data comes to the secured folder. The ASP picks this data and sends it to the IRP. IRP gives back the data. So ASP keeps a copy here for your reference, and it also pastes the data in the secured folder here. So you will have a extractor to put it here, and you will also have a connector to read the data from here and push it back into your ERP. In fact, this is one of the slide which I have taken from the GSTN. So wherein there are multiple ways of doing it. So ASPs and GSPs provide that, right? People always have this confusion: who is an ASP and who is a GSP. If I have to put in a very crude way of telling, in say in your Kolkata, you want to reach one place. Let's say that place is GSTN, right? Now to reach that place, you will have multiple roads that are available. Each of that road, you can read it as GSP, and you can walk on those road and reach that destination, or you can use the modem, other modes like cycle, aeroplane, or car, bus, whatever the facilities. Higher the comfort, higher the cost, but there are facilities which will take you to that. So ASPs are the medium or the carriers which will use the connector of GSP and put the data into the GSTN, right? So that is the difference between an ASP and a GSP. ASP is a service provider. GSP is a GST Suvidha provider to ensure that there's a connection between the application and the server of the GSTN, that's the GSTN server. So that's the role of a GSP is. Okay. And what is that you have to do? You have to do a one-time mapping of the fields. Basically, this is the left side. You are seeing the schema given by the NIC, something which you can understand. The right side is the table definition, which will be there in your database. I have picked up SAP, like the supplier legal name in SAP would be written as LFA1, LAFA1 name 1, right? The trading name is something. So SAP is not an Indian product, so somewhere which is done in German or Spanish. So when it is imported into India, India maybe is like backend database will say the same. The top label which you are seeing, that label will be something else, right? So one has to do a thorough mapping. So there are vendors who have already done this mapping for the 500 crore market. So in a 100 crore market, I don't see an implementation challenges will happen. The implementations would be quicker and faster. So let me do a live demo of how the e-invoice would happen or e-invoice would look like. Let me just connect to my system. Okay, is the tally visible?
Yes, sir.
Perfectly visible.
All right. Okay, so here is one small example. So this is a connector of a service provider. So I install the connector. It says B2B invoice, B2C QR code, and e-waybill various application. I go to my invoice register. It shows me different invoices under different the colors. So basically here he uses a color combination. If the invoice is IRN is generated, he puts it in blue color. If he has also requested for e-waybill, he puts it in green color. And if it is something to be done, it is in this black color. So I just select this invoice and I will say upload to e-invoice. So all does it do? It connects to the government portal, and can you see, it's like it doesn't even, it didn't take much time. It just connected and the e-invoice is done. So that's the speed at which it happens. So you enter the invoice, you can see the details of IRN and the various other status. Like how is this? This is a normal sales invoice. Like this is a normal sales invoice of whatever we see. There's one item. You can also have multiple items. Like if you want, you can have as many items in this. So I just create a normal details. Okay, there is an error. That's okay. We'll just see. So there's I created some other item. I just select this, and not just one. I can select 2 line items or multiple. If you have multiple things, just say upload to the government portal. It will connect to the service provider, and there it has just done. Can you see? It is like 2 invoices happened on a real-time basis, and IRN is generated. When I print this invoice, 1 second. Let me quit and open. Yeah, so we can also print the invoice and okay, after issuing, no problem. Okay, so the invoice is visible to you with the QR code. So the document gets printed with the QR code and the IRN number on the top of it. So that's it happens automatically. Yeah. So the QR code is there, invoice is there. So everything you have seen the process happen within the system by itself. Sorry, you like this Tally Prime has some initial setup issues. I'll also show you with the Prime. I'm not sure how many of you have started using Prime. Prime is also pretty good working. And another important thing one should also know is generation of an e-waybill. So here in this invoice, I want to generate parallelly the e-waybill. So I want to enter the e-waybill related information to it. And I request for e-invoice. And when I request the e-invoice gets generated along with the e-waybill. In this case it missed it. Let's see why it missed it. Generate an e-waybill. Okay, so sometimes it misses. So on click of it, it generates. Now, what is the data which is going to the government portal? Now, if we look at the data which is going to the government portal, let me show you. So let me say export JSON. So there's a file that gets generated. This is the data which got generated. Yeah. So whatever we have seen, there are various sections. So there is a section of buyer, there is a shipping details, there is a document details. Whenever I requested for an e-waybill details, whatever the line items which have been there, the item related information. If there are any credit terms, everything, payment details, the seller related information, dispatch details. So there are various sections within the invoice is passed to the government portal in this way. And you can also see this data, which has been generated. You can view this, you can download the signed payload, and you can go to the government portal E-Invoice -GST one dot the thing. When you go there, it will help you to verify the signed invoice. You can click on verify signed invoice, you say browse, and the signed data which is there, this is what we have downloaded. Yes. And you submit, you will see the same thing. This is what we have now generated an invoice with these many line items, and what is the thing, at what time we have now generated at 6:25, right? 6:25:04 thing, what time which we have generated, it will show up the information, everything. It is going to show you in live, so user can see this. Now, how do I scan this QR code? Whatever the QR code which I'm seeing, how do I scan it? The government also has given a utility to verify the scanned QR code. They have given the method of seeing how to do it. So in the downloads section, they have, where was it? Yeah. So in the tools section, there is the verify QR code app. So you enter your mobile number and OTP, an app gets downloaded. Once it is downloaded, using that app, you scan this section, you will automatically get the information of this IRN. You will get the invoice number, you will get the seller name, you will get the total value in the invoice. So high level information is available on this, right? So this process is available in multiple applications. In fact, like Tally Prime, I'm sure most of you are aware that Tally Prime is the new ERP of the Tally. Even this, from here you can automatically do the same process, upload e-invoice, it connects to the government portal and does the e-invoice. It's like, it is that speed. The process of generating an e-invoice is quicker. It doesn't even take. Now you can see here the invoice got generated. You can see it is in green color. It generated e-way bill along with this. I print this document, or just enter here. Yeah, you can see the e-way bill number automatically filled up into this portion. So the e-invoice, from the user perspective, how to do an e-invoice is not a complicated subject. All that from the accountant needs to know that, okay, I process the sales entries, whatever I need to do, and like end of the day, I have too many data. Okay, I did, these are the invoices I did here, and I just say, okay, upload all these invoices to the government portal. It says, okay, if it is not generated, it will generate. If it is generated, it says already generated. Like in one go, it generates an e-invoices relevant e-way bills automatically in one go, right? So from the user perspective, if I have to say the process of generation of e-invoice is, that's all. This is the process of generation of an e-invoice. One wants to do a manually, definitely government has given options for them to do manually. You can they have given the bulk generation tools, wherein you go here. I said there are 4 formats: format A, B, C, D. The format A is the simplest, where it is B2B HCZ exports in one sheet. Then it is detailed, it is there in 2 sheets. You have multiple line items. You also want to capture the payment reference and other details, you have in format C and D. So users can use this, and they want to understand what is e-invoice attributes, what is the JSON schema. The government also has given a sample file. One can explore the sample file. Okay, those who have understanding of the schema, they have given various elements of the schema which is there. The file which I have shown in the JSON, this is what they have given, what should be the document type, the content of it. With an example, they have given all the information, what is that one is expected to do, and also with the validations, the total validations, everything has been given here, and one can use this document, right? Okay. Next, moving further, where is the presentation? Is the presentation PPT visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So moving, okay, if I have to talk about live demo, like that's all. You just need to hook up to any of the service provider, and the job is so much. Or you download Excel and just do the data entry. In fact, as a chartered accountant, I see a great opportunity to help customers in making them go live with the e-invoice, because there's not much rocket science in it. You need to identify the accounting software of the client, and you just need to see which is the service provider that suits. Like in the example which I have given, an ASP and GSP, for some people, they want to go in Ola Uber car, someone wants to go it in tram, someone wants to go in a bus, someone wants a bicycle. So looking at the need of the client and looking at the type of service providers that suit them, of course the cost is also, every comfort comes with the cost. So looking at that you can easily hook on to that, and you can be an implementation provider. It is absolutely not a rocket science. In fact, someone wants to do get into that practice area, it's anyhow as a short season for another 3 months, 6 months, someone wants to do it, you should definitely venture it, and you can always reach to me for support, and I can help you how that needs to be done, because I have done close to 300 odd GST and implementations so far. So it's not if I can do, definitely you can do. So let's move on. What are the advantages of e-invoice? Now, how will my life look, or how will the business will look like after the e-invoice is implemented? I am not talking about a scenario right now, because we have just adopting the e-invoice. I am not talking a scenario of tomorrow, but definitely an year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now, it is going to change multifolds. Like today, you cannot, even if you want to, you cannot file your GST or 13B manually. You cannot say that, look, I am doing business, I am an illiterate, you can't expect me to have an email. It is against my ethics. I will not have an email. I will fill it and give. No, like we have passed on. I will apply my registration manually. No, everything passed on. We have moved to an era. Everything is slowly moving to electronic. In fact, today, if one have to maintain books of accounts manually, I'm sure most of us, when we did articleship way back then, we had manual books. तब की टाइम थी, अगर हमने ट्रायल बैलेंस टैली कर दिया तो that was like a great achievement. अरे हो गया, it's like that was a it was a big thing. If you tallied the trial balance, you are considered to be a superb accountant, right? I have seen computers after like in my fag end of my articleship, and the seniors would definitely know there used to be an EDP section. Though in computer operators stay, and only they can do the data entry. I have to prepare P&L balance sheet manually and go and submit them. They used to do. Like today we can't envisage that. Today, if I ask someone to prepare an IT computation, it's like हाथ में लिखने is like it is दूर की बात, imagination beyond imagination. I need system. एक्सेल में करो तो एक्सेल में भी थोड़ा सोचूंगा, क्यों, व्हाई डोंट यू गिव मी अ सॉफ्टवेयर, आई विल डू अ डेटा एंट्री, दैट सॉफ्टवेयर विल गिव मी द कंप्यूटेशन. क्यों मेरे को ऐसे तंग कर रहे हो? लाइक दैट्स वे people think. It's like, if you try article, prepare a computation on an Excel and give it to me, he will easily take 2 days to prepare one simple salary data, right? Let's look at how will our life become after the e-invoice. Firstly, filing software. You doesn't need a written filing software. There is no requirement of a written filing software. You have done your e-invoice data flowing into GSTR1. GSTR1 data of your suppliers is automatically flowing to 2B on a cutoff date. Data of GSTR1 and 2B flows to GSTR3B. You have paid your taxes, you will file the returns. So your filing of returns is like next submit, right? First screen में liability दिखा from R1, second screen में ITC दिख गया from 2B. Offset system will automatically offset. You don't need to do an offset. System knows the optimal method of offset, so it submits. You have to just sign DSC लगा के either OTP or DSC and just file. That is going to be the process of the return filing in the days to come. So if someone believes that, okay, under GST compliance practice is huge, rich, I will do, or honestly, these the providers who have done the GST return filing softwares, unka danda band ho jayega. They will not, you will not require any return filing software. B2C, you may say, sir, B2C का data तो भरना है. अभी B2C का, even if you have 1 lakh invoices or one invoice, you will enter the value in table 7. You don't need, you are not going to enter each line wise or item wise thing in B27. You only need a matrix of rate wise, state wise. That's it. So a combination of that is what one needs to have. So you technically doesn't need a return filing software. What you need is a good reconciliation software, right? Then compliance. The compliance is going to become very much simplified. First, the e-way bill. Today, if one has to generate an e-way bill, it is a 5 minutes job. He has to do a data entry in his system, enter the data. Let's take the same example of Tally. Tally में एक invoice बनाऊंगा, उसका प्रिंट आउट लूंगा, go to e-way bill portal, फिर से e-way bill में एंटर करूंगा. वरना Tally gives a JSON, वो JSON output लूंगा. I'll log into e-way bill portal. I will upload that JSON. It will show up what is the information I have entered. मैं check कर लेता हूँ सही है कि नहीं. Then I will press submit. e-way bill generate होती है, उसको print निकालता हूँ. I will come back to the Tally, e-way bill section open करूंगा. I will enter the e-way bill number. Then उसका print निकाल के मैं गाड़ी जो भी transporter है उसको सौंप देता हूँ. Whole of this process minimum take 5 minutes. But you have noticed I have generated those bulk invoices, those 10 invoices, just select all and e-invoice. जहाँ जहाँ गाड़ी का details था वो e-way bill बन गई है. जहाँ जहाँ का गाड़ी का नहीं है e-invoice बन गया. So later when the goods are ready, I just update the vehicle number and again press that button. Then e-way bill gets generated. So you have seen the time at which it has done, it has lower, and the accuracy. The moment I do a data entry here and a data entry there, chances of errors are there. Now the chance of error is not going to be there. Next, the reconciliation for 2A. So my physical invoice and GSTR1 is the same. You might notice most of the times the invoice has carrying 00021, 00022. But when they did the data entry in GSTR1, वो खाली 21 या 22 रहेगा. Now there is no data entry. It is a real-time the data availability. So there is no room for error in the invoice numbers. Then your compliance with 16 subsection 2 on the document. Document is available real-time. In fact, someone asked this question. On top of it, the supplementing your timelines for the credit. हमेशा हम earlier VAT regime में vendor से C form के लिए follow करते थे. अभी सर 2A में नहीं दिख रहा है, आप इनवॉइस नहीं चढ़ाए, ये मेरा कॉपी है. दिस मेल कम्युनिकेशन 16 subsection 4 read with 36 sub rule 4. Sorry, there's a typo. It is not section 36. It is rule 36 sub rule 4. So you have to you don't need to do any of this. This is taken care automatically by the system, and it is taken so beautifully that you will know that okay, ये इसका हुआ, इसका नहीं हुआ on a real time. Currently, you still have, if you call a supplier, sir मेरा quarterly filer है, मैं 3 महीने के बाद फाइल करूंगा. So all this वो झंझट झमेला पूरा चला जाएगा. Then your AP process. AP process is going to become smoothened so much. Firstly, the schema is a unified language. Today, if someone wants to prepare an accounting software, like there is no schema or there is no standard document. Is there any schema for an invoice in India? Answer is no. From the GST perspective, GST says, अच्छा rule 46, आपके अपने invoice में जो भी करना है आप कर लो, but rule 46 में इतना है वो मेरे को दे दो बस. You go to Drug Control Act, that says that okay, अच्छा, I need to know the medicine expiry date or this. Or Weights and Measurement Act says that okay, you print the net weight, gross weight, or some each act says मेरा इतना चाहिए. Like our accounting standard, like for inventory valuation AS2 or revenue recognition AS9, we do not have a standard for an invoice. So if someone is building a new software, all that they will do, वो SAP का एक printout ले लेगा, Oracle का एक printout ले लेगा, and okay, इतना fields रहना है, he prepares his database and he also generates the same. Now today, all softwares, Oracle, SAP, QuickBooks, Zoho, Tally, whatever be the software, they now have to talk a common output language for an invoice. Predominant of our transaction is invoice related and it is common. The moment it is common, so if I am a recipient, I get an e-invoice, I can automatically enter the data in my books of accounts. And the quantum of the information that an e-invoice can contain, it is 10 times more than a physical invoice. It is 10 times more than a physical invoice. In a physical invoice, you will only see the seller credentials as address, right? But here you can have an opportunity to have multiple addresses. Their alternate registration numbers they have, like their trade registration number, SIN, all those things. The company URL can fit into the e-invoice. Product related, on the product, like if you're buying a mobile phone, you will see this IMEI number, the warranty and other details. All this information can get in, and the batch details, the attributes of it. Like when I say attribute, like if I'm selling this shirt, I can always say the size of the shirt, the color of the shirt, the texture, if there is an internal anything. So all those product attributes can get in to the e-invoice. So whenever I'm selling, so the trade has a different need. All those trade needs can be accommodated in the e-invoice. So when I'm selling, say this phone, I can always say that, okay, make of this, say iPhone, the model number, the IMEI number, all this, the color, everything, at least some, so 20 attributes. In the physical invoice which I give, I will say 100 iPhone boxes, Sophia. But the other information you want to capture it and give it to your vendor, your buyer along with it, you can capture it in the e-invoice and give it your general terms and conditions, within how many days you want the payment to happen, in which bank you want to get the thing to happen, this is against which PO, if there are already some invoices which have been raised. Like I am saying, in the service industry, I am deploying people, and I have deployed 10 people Java experience from 25th of October to 5th November. I have deployed, this is my rate card. I want to feed all this information and send it. Possible, all that can be accommodated in the e-invoice. So that is what I have been saying, that people can make a good use of it and do it. Once this information is coming to me as a buyer in the e-invoice, all that I will do is I'll just give the schema to the government. In the government, sorry, not in the government, in my ERP reads all this and puts it into the respective buckets. All that I have to see is, okay, press this button, mera purchase account ho gaya, and it has been automated. It happens such a smoother and better, simpler way. So your AP process is completely automated. Next, the financing. You are going to see a new phase of financing, which is invoice based financing. Lot of banks, lot of NBFCs are getting geared up to do this. The current financing structure is a very static limits. So आपने एक टर्म लोन लिया, से 7 साल का इतना EMI रेट पे एक फिक्स हो जाएगा. वर्किंग कैपिटल, you have applied for a working capital loan, चलो every year you have to renew it, okay, based on your last historical current asset ratio. They will make say that, okay, you some 75% of your inventory, 60% of your debtors, they fix some limit and give it to you, right? Now with the invoice based financing, it is going to become a dynamic structure. Like if you are a salaried, or the thing, you log into your HDFC account or ICICI bank account, you will see a pop-up on the top which says that, okay, you are eligible for a pre-approved loan of say 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs. Now, how did the system know that 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs can give? actually that can be your monthly salary or whatever, but system thinks okay इतना amount उसका बैंक अकाउंट में इतना credits मेरे को दिख रहा है, उसके लिए मेरे को I don't need a documentation, you just press this button, I will read it and I will give it, right? So systems are intelligent enough. Today the banks are now geared up. I am working with couple of the service providers who works with the bank in designing this system, where you do an e-invoice. Once connected to the system, they read the data through your GSTR1 and other things. They read your bank statement, they match it, and they say okay, what is the quality of this customer to whom you have supplied, within what cycle he sends make the payments to you, right? Then they say okay, based on this invoice I'm going to say you have raised an invoice for 5 lakhs. He says okay, a credit of 3.5 lakhs is sanctioned to you for 3 months. It's like the business terms, the financing terms is going to become very dynamic. This is something which is going to happen. And again, as I said in the beginning, it is not something you will be seeing today or tomorrow, but in the days to come, this is what it is going to happen. So system automatically fixes the rate of interest looking at the credentials of the customer buyer. System automatically fixes the repayment period. It knows when the money comes back, till what time we can take. So system automatically fixes, and this is going to happen. Next, vendor complaints. Even GST and working, because right now they have entered into the phase 3 of the GST and implementation, and that is where they are going to work on vendor rating. A new age rating is going to come, red, amber, green. So all the color combinations to your customers and suppliers you will be seeing in the when you log in, like when you download your GSTR 2A or 2B, you will see the list of suppliers. You will start to see with the color combination. The work is going on it, and they are going to give a rating. So your system, your ERP systems are also now going to give a rating to it, and with a likely defaults and early warn signs are going to come up. We have already seen the portal started blocking for non-compliance dealers जिसका GSTR 3B नहीं भरा हुआ, खाली GSTR 1 भर रहे हैं and tax payments नहीं हो रहे, so उनका e-way bill portal is automatically blocked. To those buyers, you can't even generate an e-invoice for them. You can't make a supply to them. So this is going to happen, and it is going to give you a real-time gap. Matlab, when is your invoice date? When is the, like if you have bought from someone, what is the invoice date of it? When did he file his GSTR1? When did he file his GSTR3B? Against each line, each document of the taxpayers, you are going to see this gap for each of the document. So this is a real-time data that is going to come up. And they're also doing a chain mapping where the buyers and sellers of all the defaulters is going to come up, and they're also coming up with an associated network like a Google page rank algorithm, where from one website to other website, based on the traffic analysis, who should come in page 1, page 2. So so all those algorithms, they're very simple but a good probability algorithms, all that are being deployed, and this information is available to the ERP vendors. So ERP vendors, on a click of a button, this information via API, it is going to come. In fact, I have a vendor who has done his system so beautifully. It's like, again, imagine like a tally, a blank tally data. It says, acha, who are your customers and who are your suppliers, you will say. So it starts with, okay, give me your GST login. It downloads the GSTR 2A. Basis the 2A GST and ID, it goes to the government portal, exactly picks the seller name and the trade name, the address, all the information it picks, automatically creates that as the customer master, vendor master, and based on the 2A data, it records the purchase with the invoice number as the bill reference. It reads the bank statement and looks at the payment details, and it will post those as your payment entries, automatically knocking off the bill reference. All this happens automatically, seamlessly, right? So from the accountant perspective, the digitization is going to happening so fast that if we don't catch up with this new age tools, techniques, and the thing, we are going to become outdated. And this is what I'm saying is, I'm not exaggerating. this is the in fact you have seen the e-invoice is like बात करने में बड़ी बड़ी होती है, but e-invoice is like I just press that button, e-invoice हो गया. It's like that's the speed at which the technology is there, and that's what happening, right? So friends, this is what I have to share with you. And if you have any questions, we are open to take questions. And I should definitely thank Shivani ji and Shubham ji for considering me to talk on this subject, to share some of the views. And if you have any questions, feel free to write to me, and I'm available to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, so now I'll just quickly request my co-chairperson Shubham to quickly moderate a few questions we have on the chat box. We need to close at 7, Shubham, so as many as you can and can manage in this time frame. I'll request you to please proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Venu sir, for your wonderful session. We have a few questions. I am just reading those out, which are there in the chat box after you had answered. So can e-invoice be generated for invoice come bill of supply?
Yeah, so invoice come bill of supply is applicable to a B2C vendor, B2C customer, not a B2B. So for a B2C, e-invoice is not applicable.
All right. Since IRP stores only high-level values of the invoice, can we amend the physical data, which is the physical invoice, as long as overall data in invoice matches with invoice data retained by IRP? Okay. So they want to change a few details here, sir.
Yeah, so you can change the details. Like क्या change कर सकते हो? Like against my name, you can prefix with CA. But you can't change that. Okay, I sold iPhone. Do change it to Android phone. वो नहीं कर सकते. It's like whatever the items you have sold, everything. You can't change that because the values are already there. HSN is already there with the IRP, and the data has already traveled to the GSTR1. So the non-financial data which is not affecting the tax, you might want to change it. You can change, no harm, but don't change the supplier name and other things. So other than the JSON information, other information you want to change, you can change.
All right. So another question is, can Tally automatically make entries for e-invoices generated by the vendor? Right now, is this facility there?
Okay, by the way, whatever though I have shown you from Tally, it is not a feature of Tally. Tally is yet to come with the e-invoicing, and they're most likely to come from 1st January. There are service providers there who does all this. In fact, whatever I have I've told you about 2A recording into 2A's purchase and everything. Those services are available. There are third-party service providers who are who does this.
All right. Sir, I have a few more questions which I have got offline. So first question is, automatically the rate of tax is being taken in the platform. For example, HSN code is a particular 4202 example. The rate is being taken automatically as 18%. No. They want to manually modify it to 12%. Is that practically possible? Because that is being done in the offline tool, but not in the API integration time.
Yeah. So again, the API doesn't take the rate of tax automatically. You can choose, like I am selling something, I feel whatever I am selling is 12%. I have an option to give. So IRP doesn't do any validation. You sell Kaju, but you put the rate of steel, IRP doesn't stop it. So as long as it is a valid rate, it's like you can't put 7% rate of tax, but a valid rate of tax, it is permitted by the system.
All right. So another question is export with payment of tax. In that case, usually the taxable value is equal to invoice value because we are not charging the tax amount from the recipient. So normally, correct, whenever we show the tax amount, it usually adds that amount and puts it in the invoice value. Should should there be any feature, or is there any feature right now to only disclose the tax amount but not charge the tax amount from the recipient?
Yeah, so see, in the export with payment of tax, technically whether with pay or without pay, if you're making $1,000 bill, you want to collect only $1,000. But while reporting to the IRP and GSTR1 wants what is the tax amount of it, because you are going to create it as a liability in 3B and you will claim a refund of it. So the suggestive practice which the IRP has said is, I have to capture that it is a $1,000, 1 lakh value INR into 18%, 18,000. I have to capture the tax liability. Since you are not collecting 18,000 from the customer, just park it as a under discount column 18,000, so that your net value of the invoice is going to become 1 lakh only. And to the GSTR1, you have two fields, transaction value and taxable value. So the transaction value will be shown as 1 lakh, taxable value will be shown as 1 lakh, and the tax amount 18%, it is with pay. That's how the GSTR1 gets auto populated.
I understand, sir. Sure. So one more question which is coming very frequently is, as a CA, you had said with regard to implementation, a lot of CAs can do it on their own. So where the softwares are available for integration, what will be the role of a CA for getting the client's data implemented here? What is the service that they can provide apart from referring them to a relevant ASP or GSP?
Yeah, so all these ASPs and GSPs do pretty bad job. When I say bad job, okay, it's not the intention. See, their job is to only to sell the software. I have shown you that the number of fields which are there in the thing, they are going to pick the standard 28 fields which is required for generating an invoice, and they generate it. But we as a chartered accountant, we understand the finance domain well. Couple of things, our role comes in. There are a lot of softwares. We know the client, we know the client behavior, the time intervals in which he generates, the errors that happen. Some clients wants the data on cloud, some doesn't want on the cloud. So we can suggest choosing the best software. Second, having chosen, we can do implementation. Seeing, okay, the software is integrated, implemented, we have to do a field level mapping. So we can say, okay, this client has the details when it comes to the shirt, the color, the other things are stored in this field of this. So one also can play the role of doing the field level mapping. So this is a chartered accountant definitely has a good play in implementation of the software.
Sure, sir. And so after the restrictions are in place, right now there are no restrictions for the time limit under which it needs to be generated. Does it need to be generated on the same day, or is there some sort of time limit within which needs to be done?
They have the first level they have envisaged is 48 hours. Then that they have contemplated to relax it to a 15-day period. And the upper limit they are contemplating is by the end of the month or before filing of GSTR 1 due date, whichever the thing. But very likely they will set a date. So the upper limit, they will definitely set a date, but we have to comply by that.
All right, sure. I think this is all we have, I think, sir, with regard to all the questions that have come in. I'll first ask Shivani to take this session forward now and conclude.
I'll take this session forward by doing the most, sir, one of the most prestigious tasks, honestly. And, both Shubham and me, when we were deliberating on the topic and the speaker, just one name, as what you call the top of the mind recall. And honestly, this is not false flattery, sir. This was you. And after 2 hours of non-stop listening to you, now I realize there is so much more that I need to know. And I'm sure every participant has benefited immensely by your session. There were a couple of questions which the participants shared, and very kind enough of you to throw light on each one of them. I'm sure we'll have one more session which will only be query based. There will be nothing that you need to say, but only queries from our side. So, sir, on behalf of ACAE, I take immense pride and privilege in thanking you, sir, for being around always, just, as they say, a call away, honestly, sir. And this topic is so interesting. And personally, what I loved is that, there is a mindset with these smaller assessees. When we use jargon terms like E-Invoicing, they have this mentality ki kaise hoga, things are becoming more complicated for us, and there is no concept of ease of business. So the light that you threw on this concept, that it's just a term, but honestly, if someone understands the integrities behind it, probably it's not much that one needs to worry. So I'll request my co-chairperson Shubham to please share the e-memento, sir. This is all we can do in the virtual world. I know we are all going in this e-world mode, e-invoicing, e-returns and e-assessments. I just hope we, come out of this ambit of e-VCs and e-lectures, because there is nothing like meeting someone like you in person and taking all the knowledge that you have. So Shubham, if you can quickly please share that. And
Yeah, sure.
sir,
Very good.
on
I
entire team,
always
please,
love the mementos that I get from your team. So nice. Yeah, very nice.
yes.
Thank you.
And before we leave, I would request all of you to please join. Tomorrow we are having a group discussion on yet another very interesting topic related to GST. Our very what should I say, prompt GD managers, Mr. Vikas Banka and Priyank Singhi, they leave no stone unturned in getting the best speakers and choosing the best topics. We have a discussion on 2A versus 2B tomorrow. All the GDs happen on Wednesday from 5 to 7. Tomorrow it's a topic on GST. So I personally request all of you to be there. It's 2A versus 2B, and we have a very good speaker from, again, outside Bengal. So request all of you to please join and interact in the session. So everyone, thank you so much. Good evening, good night. And Venu sir, to you, a very big thank you once again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for.
Bye-bye.